and welcome to AMA, Ask Media Anything. I am Patricio Salinas. Thanks for joining us for this conversation between our local media professionals and you, our audience. The 2018 Poynter Media Trust Survey indicates that local media outlets are trusted by a majority of Americans, even as trust in national outlets has declined. It's easy to understand why Acadiana has trust in our local media, in addition to providing us with important information about our area. They are active participants in our community, so who better to answer our questions about the media than our local experts? Here tonight to share their insight and answer some of your questions about the sometimes elusive media industry, we have James Flachsenhaar, Vice President of News at the Daily Advertiser. Flax, as he is commonly known, has over 30 years of print news media experience, a graduate of the University of Detroit Mercy with a bachelor's in sociology. He has built a track record of success in presentations, branding, and internet marketing. Before becoming the executive editor for the Daily Advertiser and serving as he served as executive editor for the Daily Record, Courier News, and the News Tribune. He has a passion for building communications and marketing synergy across technical and non-technical initiatives through news media content. Now, for tonight's program, we are facilitating conversation between media producers and media audiences. If you have a question for our guests during this live program, you can use the hashtag AOC Free Speech Week or hashtag AMA Flax to ask on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can also call us at 337-366-8951. Welcome, Flax. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, so 30 years, right?
At least.
Okay, all print media?
Well, print media, but now for the past 10 years, we've been on a pretty aggressive evolution into digital media. So inside the building, we don't call ourselves a newspaper, we're a media site. But yes, I started in print journalism, which is where you can learn what journalism is, how to report, how to confirm, how to connect to the community. It's just skills that are transportable from the print realm into the digital platforms.
Okay, I was just wondering, do a lot of your reporters in the last 30 years that you meet, specifically the new ones, are most of them English majors who need a job, and so writing is a mechanism, like a tool, so that's how they end up becoming a reporter?
I think many of them are English majors. I think the calling to newspaper work is like the calling to many other professions. You feel that this is a job for you. You want to pull back the curtain on things. Maybe there's a little bit of romance in it as well. You're nosy. You know how to talk to people. You really want to bring facts to people at the end of the day and really nourish their understanding of the world, information that they can use to make decisions or to be informed citizens. That sounds really corny in 2018, where information is weaponized and, elected officials are very happy to set us against each other. But that really is still at the core of what we do, especially at a local site and not the national media outlets that, like you referred to before. We're trying to bring information to Acadiana that will help those living in Acadiana improve the quality of life and maintain it.
Okay, so you mentioned this somewhat of an evolution, obviously, into the digital realm because of your website. So how has that changed your perspective? Is there less writing involved because of the reader? Because the reader is now conditioned to read less. Has that changed a little bit?
Boy, there are a lot of changes. First of all, our audiences and our advertisers went into the internet world and live there now without our permission. Nobody asked us. Many of us in the business grew up in a household with 6 newspapers, and we persecute our remaining print readers because the newspaper is getting smaller, because there's less advertising in it and fewer people buy it. All of the action is online, which doesn't mean anything to somebody who wants the newspaper. But the most impactful thing that has happened because of the digital revolution is that we know more about our readers' behavior than we ever have. We might even know too much. We have metrics that describe their behavior on a Monday or a Tuesday, their behavior when they read story A, what story did they follow it with. We know from Facebook as well, what stories connect with their passions and their interests. In fact, we use Facebook and social media to distribute our content, but we know how far down into a story a person will read, how long they will spend on a story, whether they share it, whether they will read more deeply if we change the headline. So we can get very lost in these metrics, but by and large, it allows us to more completely, accurately, and instantaneously gauge what is resonating with readers, which is very important for an industry transforming. We need that to be able to stay open to maintain the core value of a newspaper, which is doing the stories that may not be popular, but that we feel are important to do on behalf of citizens and our audiences. So it's an interesting formula. We have to pay attention to our metrics. At the end of the day, that helps us remain open as an institution at a much lower profit level from digital sales than we had before. So it's every day is new. Every metric brings a new epiphany to what we do. But if you like puzzles, it's very interesting.
Okay. Now, interesting. Let's get to some of the questions that our viewers have sent to us. Just bear with me one moment. Okay, one of them is, why is your online content no longer free as it was 15 years?
I've never heard that question before. I'm just kidding. I hear that question 5 or 6 times an hour, and it's a fair question. When newspapers were the heart of our business and very profitable, and we were just beginning in the internet, the USA Today network and almost any other paper decided to give the information away for free because no one was conditioned to pay for it then. We didn't need the money from digital then. As audiences' preferences have changed and more of us are online now, we've had to pivot and follow our audiences out online and derive more of our revenue from online. And when it's free, you can't make that transfer. So the newspaper elevator is going down, the digital elevator is going up, but it has to be profitable as well. So we're right now in the middle of a really painful to our audiences evolution from free content to paid content, because that's where all of our efforts are. You know, we're just like any other business. We hire adults, we drive cars, we heat buildings, we have insurance, we have legal bills. It costs a lot of money to have a news gathering operation. If our audiences were not conditioned to get it for free, it would be a lot easier now. We're right now in the middle of a campaign to try to prove or remind audiences how valuable our content is and who we are. It's easy for me to win a conversation with a reader who calls in who says, you know, your content should be free. I can say, fine, it's free, but let me come to your place of business and take your things for free too, whether it's a quart of milk or a cup of coffee. But that's not what I want to do. I want to affirm the value and the uniqueness and the public service aspect of our work. So it's going to take a couple of years to get there. But the good news is that in our total network, since we've been trying to do this, we've gained several 100,000 new digital subscriptions. So at least some people are beginning to see, okay, for 99 cents for a month or for 3 months, we have some very cheap prices. Call in now for a deal. You can get all the content in the USA Today network, and you can't read all that content. And you can do research, you can become very, very smart about issues, you can become a much more intelligent person. So it's really value priced right now as we try to move into digital platforms. We hope everybody comes with us.
And have you incorporated like multimedia, specifically video, in your online on your webpage?
Yes, and in general terms, any news organization, probably not a TV station, but any non-TV news organization, we have access to our audiences 2 or 3 times a day, probably for 3 or 4 minutes at a time on their phone. No one's curling up with the news. No one's waking up and running to a newspaper website. They're going to Facebook. But we have to engage people. And by and large, the storytelling format is video. You're standing in line at the donut store. You're picking up your kid at school. That's when we need to find you. So the stories need to be told quickly. They need to be told in an engaging way. They need to have a hook. We need to get you into the habit of coming back. But we still only have you 3 or 4 times a day because your life is complicated. We get that. So video is right now, this will change in about an hour and a half, but video right now is as important as anything else.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, here's one question. Why don't you cover most local meetings as you once did?
The glib, unsexy answer is no one reads those stories. When I was a reporter 30 years ago in northern New Jersey, I had several towns and I covered every meeting I covered the lights changing. I went to every police station. I covered the Shade Tree Commission meeting, and people read that. They really wanted to know what was going on in their town. Now the process of government is not really revealed at meetings. Meetings are really symptoms of news that happens upriver, and that was always the case. There were decisions made and votes being made and alliances being shifted and formed, and that's all played out at a meeting. But I tell my reporters, no one's reading the meeting story. And if you're surprised by something that happens at a meeting, you're not doing a very good job as a reporter. So go upriver and tell us the stories about what's going on in town, but tell it in ways that have more impact. Tell them in human stories. Tell them in what happened at this meeting, or this conversation between a developer and the town official. But at the meeting itself, and I don't blame readers for not really having an interest, some still do, it's really just the outcome or the symptom of something that happened a long time ago that we should have been telling earlier. So our stories pretty much are trend stories. We did a story on how the bridges in our community, 90% of them need repairs. That's a pretty good story. That could be discussed at a meeting. We did a story recently about how 30% of the folks on the sex offenders list are illegally back online on social media. That could be discussed at a meeting, but we did 6 months of research to bring that story to light. So our time is better spent pulling back the curtain on things that are not available in a press release and don't occur at a meeting. That's generally just prepackaged news, and that's the organized turn of the faucet, and you get a couple of drips of news. All the news really is that which we envision ourselves, and we dig out through just hard reporting work, getting doors slammed in your face, all the fun stuff that we all like to do every day.
You mentioned press release, and I say that because I know there's certain small cities do publish press releases.
They all do.
Yeah, they all do. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts about that in terms a genuine story that took months or weeks to do, and then just a press release?
A press release, like a Facebook chat, like a tweet, like an Instagram photo, is a potential door to a larger story. We have to look at all of them. We still get, this is not true in New Jersey where I was working most recently, we still get lots of paper faxes at the Daily Advertiser on 2 or 3 fax machines. So, those always frustrate us because if we want to use them, we have to type them in again. But we look at all of those things for trends or for anomalies or for one-offs. And often if there's a vote in which money is spent, we will use that. But they are really just markers for other news that needs to be reported more completely. A press release is a good example of something that you hear, and I bore people with this all the time. If you get a press release or somebody calls you on the phone or somebody says something at a meeting and you write it down, that's stenography. If you check it out, that's reporting, which leads to a phrase that was old when I got into the business, and I'm old. If your mother says she loves you, check it out, which means trust nothing. All the good stories forever, from Watergate down to anything else, have come from the simple fact of, I just heard this, I'm going to check it out now. And oh, wow, it's not true. Now and here we go. And every reporter knows that. And when readers see that you do that work, that's kind of what they want you to do. They should want you to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a question here. You are the media, therefore you are liberal. That's what it's saying. You are.
That's a belief.
It goes on to say you are pro-abortion, anti-Second Amendment, anti-Trump, etc.
Those are serious issues, and very often when I pick up the phone and someone is speaking to me, I hear them listening to me for a clue as to whether I am liberal or conservative. And I categorically reject that way of viewing the world. We have that indoctrinated into our heads by the national political scene. But I always ask people, despite the fact that TV shows on the national level make tons of money by playing to half the audience, for me in Lafayette, playing to half the audience is a really bad business plan. If only people who are liberal read the paper, I wouldn't be in business, and the same is true for conservative voices. But I ask people that accuse me of being liberal, and I'm not either party, I'm an independent, I always have been, why do you think I have an opinion? What do I get as a journalist? I mean, I'm not in government, I don't have executive authority, I can't really change anything. What do I care whether something is liberal or conservative? I'm really back to what I said before. I'm trying to give you information so that you can figure out how to navigate your life, how to vote, where to live, when to speak up as a citizen. That's really our sole responsibility. So Editorial pages on newspapers tend to be liberal or conservative. At the Daily Advertiser, I'm pretty much dialing out our opinions on the editorial page. I'm looking for guest columnists who have years of expert opinion about something because they know it better than I do. I'm not trying to write about whether you should kneel during the national anthem, whether Donald Trump is a good or bad president. We really don't report on any of those things in a primary way. And as a result, how can we have any opinion on that? And if I did have an opinion on whether you should kneel during the national anthem or whether Donald Trump is a good or bad president, that's not my job. And it doesn't inform my work. And if I let it inform my work, there's nothing to be gained from it. We have a very apolitical newsroom anyway. So
Sure, but kind of sticking to that thought, because the Washington Post, right, legendary for bringing down President Nixon, and just as soon as President Trump was inaugurated, they created a subtitle called it's Washington Post and it's Democracy Dies in Darkness. And obviously that's definitely, it's their theme now, right, for lack of a better word.
that came in with the new editor, not the new president, Marty Baron.
Well, it coincided.
Maybe, yeah. But that's a very apolitical statement. I mean, if I said, if your mother says she loves you, check it out, and I happen to be saying that at a time a certain politician came in, you could make the connection, but it's a tenuous connection at best. That really is democracy does die in darkness. We should all be very worried if, Americans think that we really don't need someone double checking on this sort of stuff. When they were impaneling the Brian Pope jury recently, which was about the failure to produce public records, many of the jurors said during the impanelment procedure, we don't think the media needs these public records, but they should make sure to tell us what they need them for before we get them. And I would just point out that the public records are owned by the public, produced by people whose salaries we pay, who we elected, in buildings that we pay for. So it's not really open to dispute. That's a horrifying thought, that we can't tell what's going on in our government. And that's really the role of the newspaper, to really just make sure that we can keep track of the people we elect, and that they're working on our behalf. So that slogan, I think it's a pretty cool slogan, but it doesn't have anything to do with Democrats or Republicans.
Okay. All right. So let's go with some more questions here. And it says, can you guys include roller derby in the sports section?
The answer is yes, we could, but I don't think I've heard that request in a long time, and probably we would. Here's how I would respond to that. I would ask somebody who's an expert on roller derby, and maybe this person will get in touch with me, to write something themselves as a column if they're passionate about it, and we'll put it online. And there might be a roller derby a social media world in which people are very passionate about it, and if we could share that content there, we could. I can't deploy a resource to cover it in a primary basis because we don't have that many people. We have enough to do what we need to do, but that is way low down on how audiences have described their interest.
Okay. We have another question right here. With several different media outlets on a nationwide level being the target of violence, such as the Baltimore Sun earlier this year, do you ever fear for your safety?
I don't, but we are taking steps in Lafayette and at all USA Today Network sites to review our procedures. If there is a threat, we've all had active shooter training. We're in the process now of hardening our buildings. I mean, that's what a waste of time and money to have to do that, but you have to do that. So I'm concerned that nobody on my watch is hurt or threatened or feels have their liberties impinged on or hurt, for God's sake. So, and it happened again today with explosive packages being delivered to the CNN New York headquarters and Democrats. So we have to be careful about that. We have to plan for the worst. However, happily, we are in Acadiana, which I'm sure there's a great difference of a political opinion and a difference about the press, but we seem to be a very engaging and supportive community. And, you can see that from time to time when there's a great tragedy in town, a flood, a theater shooting, any other murder, we come together, and that's just a wonderful thing. So I'm very heartened and feel very optimistic about Acadiana. Maybe they'll just come and yell at me if they're mad.
Okay. All right, so we have a couple more questions here. It says, where is the black media representation, and how have your organizations tried to incorporate the black viewpoint?
Well, with contributed editorials, I try to reach out and make that very diverse. We've had an editor and a reporter who cover events in the Black neighborhood, whether it's prayer walks at night or uh, 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 services in churches or ministers and their opinion. We very much made the Black community, to our great detriment, a part of our I-49 coverage, in which our reporter kept on properly including, well, what is the impact on the west side, on the north side to this development, and can the development be expanded? And there are no Black voices in this. So the same reporter wrote about the Smile community agency, which was distributing millions of dollars in federal Head Start programs money, which was doing things that were not necessarily supported by stakeholders. And because of our reporting, many Head Start recipients were children. There's now a new agency, more appropriately and more transparently funneling that money. So when we see a story like that, we're sort of colorblind, but we also, the USA Today Network requires us to make sure that we are scanning for that as well. So we've done a pretty good job here. Most development stories in Lafayette, we will include, how does this impact the community? Is there equity?
Okay, great answer. What's changed in your profession since you started, and what do you expect to happen in the next 15 years?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, going from print to digital has been a great, wonderful elevator ride. I think what's going to be going forward is that there'll be fewer print editions of the paper. Maybe there'll be fewer days of the week that we're published because there's no market for it. And I think that the USA Today network, and I can speak about that, because we have 109 sites, we can scale efficiencies. We'll be around the longest. I know we are developing a large nationwide network now where we can do stories on behalf of all communities. We did a story out of Indianapolis, that brought down the doctor that was abusing Olympic athletes. We've done stories on long-haul truckers who were abused. We've done stories on bad cops who leave one town under indictment and get a job in a new town because the states don't check with each other. We're going to be able to do stories like that, and I think those are the stories that are distinguish us and work on behalf of people. And we're just going to keep that faucet turned on. The platforms will change, but the journalism will increase and get better.
Hey, I know we're running out of time, but just one last thought, because I remember when I was in graduate school 10 years ago, we had this speaker, and he basically said that by the year 2037, that's when the last newspaper is going to be thrown into a trash bin. And I
What a nice thought.
I know that's 19 years away from now. And it is a very harsh thought, specifically since you're a newspaper man. But any thoughts about that? Because basically that means it's a paperless society.
But not a journalism-less society.
Correct.
So print is a platform. Journalism lives on everywhere, and it always will, even on platforms yet to be invented.
Great conclusion.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for joining us for this episode of Ask Media Anything. We want to thank our media expert for this episode, James Flachsenhaar, Vice President of News for the Daily Advertiser. We hope that you have enjoyed and learned something from this conversation. Visit aocinc.org to find out about the next episode of Ask Media Anything on AOC. Until then, we encourage you to stay engaged and informed with your community.